Welcome in the Quest Number 9 podcast. My name is Seth Warner, and on this podcast, we talk about Kentucky basketball from a fan's perspective. On this episode, we're going to be talking about all things Kentucky basketball, but in particular, we're going to be talking about Kentucky really getting into the practices, it being the second week back, and what we've learned early on, and what news has came out of Kentucky with it officially being announced that Kentucky's getting a new facility, and just other overall news that's came out from Kentucky in the last week or so. They're getting a new practice facility. The Joe Kraft Center is where they practice now. Is going to now become the women's basketball and women's volleyball practice facility, and they're going to also remodel that. They're going to do a lot of different things. They're going to add a health center close to that. They're trying to do a large remodel of all of the sports and not just doing men's basketball at one time. So that's going to be good. They're still in the very early stages of doing a connected space that's connected to the university that the university owns, similar to how some NBA teams and NFL teams have, that are restaurants, stores, and different things like that near, if you know, Memorial Coliseum and around like Kroger Field area would be their goal going forward. They're not sure about funding. That's going to be the next year or so, but we'll see what Kentucky ends up getting out of this. But the baseline is getting a new basketball facility and having a women's basketball and women's volleyball practice facility that's just for them, and adding a new like health wing, allowing it to be closer to the sports instead of having to go to its own designated area. Also, another update is they remeasured all the players and did all their new measurements. One of the big standouts for that was Jaden Quaintance. Jaden Quaintance grew an inch and a half according to their measurements. I don't take too much from these just because measurements can always depend. They had Jalen Lowe listed at 6 foot at the NBA Combine. Kentucky has him listed at 6'3". There's just a lot of variation sometimes. An inch or two can come with your shoes, but the really big part for me is he's added 40 pounds. He went from 215 to 255. I think that's really good for him. I was looking at some body types that I kind of like. Bankero was somebody I was looking at. He weighs 250 at 6'10", so that's around where JQ is. I always thought JQ was 6'10", but they had him listed 6'9" for a little while. So that similar body type, probably a little bit bigger. If he gets up to probably 265, 260 is where I would like to see him, to have some of that physicality, allow him to still be able to play the five, but I think he could play the four at the next level and would allow him to have a little bit more flexibility and versatility. Overall, he has not started non-contact practicing yet. If you're interested in about talking about that, Sources 8 episode last night I thought was very interesting talking about that. They talked about Kentucky and how if Jaden Quaintance was doing non-contact, he would have been somewhere around 4 weeks from full contact. So that was part of the reason. And to get more context with that, I would go watch that episode. And another thing we got was some Colin Chandler highlights from Coach Pope. He put them out to the media and on Twitter. It was kind of funny. He didn't format it correctly, but he was trying his best. But overall, Colin Chandler looked very dynamic. We all know he's talked about it over and over. He is going to compete. He's a competitor. He's one of Kentucky's better overall defenders, athletes. He was probably Kentucky's best athlete last year. 6'5", really long. And most people don't recognize coming out of high school, he was considered a bouncy combo guard. I think that's really what he's turning into, who can really shoot the ball. And we'll see his progression as him, and I think really Denzel Aberdeen will really thrive as that off-ball 2 position as 2 really athletic guards who can do a lot of different things on the floor, on and off the ball. And in those highlights, he did dunk on Yelovich. That was a little cold. Coach Pope putting that out only his second week on campus. But Chandler really was able to show off. But one other thing that we got from that clip, Jasper Johnson struggled defensively, not a surprise, but a guy that can just really knock down threes, as that very much like Steph Curry treatment will be getting. And a lot of these other guys, we need to have more guys that get that like Steph Curry treatment compared to some of these other individuals who are more downhill drivers, like Otega Oweh and some of these other guys. Caleb Holt finished up his visit this past weekend. The big 6'4 guard, 6'4" 2 guard who's really physical, athletic, considered one of the best or one of the best defensive guards in the country at his size, and is really just a well-rounded player, is one of the top individual athletes in this upcoming class. And also with his visit, we were able to get some momentum, but Auburn and Alabama, with reports, are still really competitive in that recruitment, and Kentucky is just trying to stay in the game. But overall, I think Kentucky just is one of the top 3 schools, with Auburn, Alabama as a Alabama native with Caleb Holt. And then Tyron Stokes, another probably Kentucky's number 1 target. He took a USC visit this past weekend. It was kind of a abrupt visit, but it seemed like it went well. But Kentucky is still all in on him. Caleb Holt is probably their number 2 guy. And Tyron really was able to had a good momentum visit. Kentucky, Louisville, it's starting to maybe potentially be USC could take a jab at it with them having a really good visit. The goal for him, I'm pretty sure, is he wants to have a commitment. My understanding is by the beginning of his high school season, that's in the next 2 months or so. They start late November. And if Kentucky ends up missing out on him, Caleb Holt will be probably Kentucky's number 1 target. Deron Rippey Jr. also another big Kentucky target. Kentucky had several in-home visits over the last week or so, and Kentucky took an in-home visit with him. They took out the whole staff last week. It was Coach Hart and the full UK staff with Mark Pope, and all the guys were out there visiting him. And also today, Coach Hart is also going to be visiting Caleb Holt at Prolific Prep and a couple other Kentucky targets. We'll see how that goes. And he's also going to be meeting with his dad, and we'll just see how all this recruiting stuff ends up. Recruiting can change very quickly, one visit to another, but I feel like Kentucky's in a good spot with all these guys, and Kentucky really is locked in on their top targets. It's probably going to be Tyron Stokes or Caleb Holt, but I would feel pretty strong about Deron Rippey, even if we got one or the other. And that's all from the Quest Number 9 podcast. My name is Seth Warner, and if you like this content, please like and subscribe. And you can go find me at Quest Number 9 on Instagram and Twitter. And I will see you next time.